Prevent the Fall is a new VR and non-VR, co-op or single-player, dungeon crawling, action RPG. If you know me, you know I like RPGs. Here's a quick phone snap of my very cherished Might and Magic collection, and I'll stick the big Might and Magic 6 video I did ages ago on the end screen of this one. So if you want to see me talk about one of my favourite games ever, you should check it out. I'm very interested in a proper dungeon crawling, high fantasy game. So let's have a look at Prevent the Fall, which is currently in early access and is available for £11 or $15, with a 10% discount for the first week. The game is all centred around your home base of the tavern, where you have a diligent bartender who's always nodding along, who acts as the hub for everything you do. There's nothing complicated here, you've got your options, you can level up in between quests, he'll have one item on sale at a time, some of which will be way out of your price range, and very traditionally, you can ask him for rumours and he'll give you a quest. You can either take the quest that he's given to you, or you can ask for a harder or easier one. The quests are all very straightforward. Either you've got to collect X amount of an item, like ginseng or wolfbane, or kill a specific enemy, or just do some scouting. There may be more, but that's all I've encountered and I'm around level 10, the max level being 20 according to the store page. The gameplay is currently better optimised for the HTC Vive, but it will work with the Rift and Touch. You walk or teleport your way around a dungeon, and you stab, slice and blast everything that gets in your way. The movement is really solid, and you've got 5 options, only 3 of which work on the touch at the moment, but I was more than happy with that. So I had the left hand set to walk via the analog stick, and I had the right hand set to teleport. This meant that if I had to backtrack, I could do that really quickly. There's no link between your movement and your stamina, so you're not punished whichever one you choose. However, from a gameplay point of view, I'd absolutely recommend using either the analog walk or the third movement option, which is called navigate. This is basically where you choose a location to move to and you'll slide your way over there instead of teleporting. Early on, I didn't realise I could use the left stick at all because it's really finicky figuring it out, but you just hit the back button on the left controller to cycle through and do the same on the right, figure out which movement styles work and make whatever combination you want. Now onto the combat, which I think we can all agree is really important. So first up is the melee, and it is pretty good. There's not really any collision in this game, and it doesn't feel the most impacting to use your weapons, but there's a lot of weapons, and they do sort of fill different niches, and they're all fun to use. The gameplay also encourages you to switch up weapons a lot by drip feeding you new types and upgrades as you go, both non-randomly and randomly. All of the fighting is gesture based, and as you can see in the bottom right of the screen, each weapon has its own moves which flashes up whenever you switch to it. These aren't always the easiest thing to do, and you might do them by accident sometimes. But generally once you've gotten to grips with it, you can use the moves as intended. For example, there's a holy strike with the sword which is really cool, and there's a flurry of damage you can do with your axe. All of your attacks are linked to your stamina, so if you're not paying attention, your damage output can and will suddenly fall off a cliff, and it really isn't obvious why. But as I said, this is early access, so adding an effect when you're low on stamina, or some kind of a sound indicator, is all well within the realms of possibility. What's really important to me is that they've managed to create a gesture system which encourages you to use your weapons as you would in real life, and they've created stamina to force you to play in a realistic way. I can imagine it's very difficult to create a combat system, and I've played games where you can just stick out any weapon, maybe waggle it slightly, and your enemy will bleed out like it's a chainsaw you've got in them. It sucks when the most efficient way to play something is really unrealistic, and they're clearly trying to push the combat in the right direction. You also get a shield, which you'll find upgrades for as you progress. The shield only comes out on your left hand, and I could see no way to change it. A number of other weapons are also left hand wieldable, usually ones that make sense, like an ankh that does holy things. Cycling through your weapons and shields is a bit awkward, because you can only do it in one direction, which means you'll have to go all the way around sometimes, but that did at least encourage me to try more weapons, especially when I really got an understanding of the different attack types you can do with the gestures. And again, I just want to reiterate, especially with the melee weapons, these attack types are in no way exhaustive, but they do work, and they're a great start. In addition to all the melee weapons, you slowly acquire staffs with different magical attributes. You get your fire staff, an earth staff, and there's a really cool undead staff. Each of these has different spells using different gestures. There are protective spells like stone skin and the ability to root your enemies in place. You can summon a bunch of undead hands from the ground using the undead wand, which was really fucking cool. You can also apparently summon undead and golems, but unfortunately I wasn't able to do this no matter how nicely I drew the pentagram. Another thing with the combat was that I just couldn't tell if the different melee and magical options had any real effect on the damage I was doing outside of the damage stats you see on the inventory screen. So for example, does using a dagger do full dagger damage against an enemy in plate mail? Would I get incentivized to switch to my bludgeoning weapons? Similarly, are lizard men weak to fire or lightning? If enemy strengths and weaknesses are present, they weren't communicated well at all. This is something that there absolutely should be to encourage playing with different weapons, and the effects of it need to be obvious. Even something as simple as the damage number that comes up when you do hit being a different colour if it's super effective or weak. Final note on the movement and combat. Despite playing a sword swinging game, I never once felt like I was hitting my boundaries too much. The gameplay fit really nicely into the minimum room scale VR size, probably because the weapon play is gesture based, so you're not just swinging around like a madman, and the movement is really comfortable. The amount of enemies on offer is really nice. I did feel like I was killing a lot of goblins at the very start, but within a few hours I'd met many an enemy, some rather unique. There are some occasions where you'll be completely flooded with enemies, which at one point made me think it was actually broken, because holy shit, this is a lot of lizard men. The enemy movement is sometimes clunky, but when they're up in your face, movement and attack animations were pretty good, though they do get awful close, and sometimes walk through you, which was a bit awkward. The AI isn't also the best in combat in general, and multiple enemies never really took advantage of their numbers. I think the enemy models look really good in a sort of old-fashioned way, and you get lots of nice opportunities to look at the skeleton archers up close, because for some reason they're incredibly stupid and can only ever fire at one spot. Lastly, on the enemies, it would be nice if they created some more unique boss monsters and had quests that didn't just name the enemy, but told you had to go find and kill the boss, whoever that is. I think that's a really nice way of going into a quest. In addition to the barrels, random bits and bobs on the floor, and chests, the enemies drop loot too. Occasionally you'll kill something and find out you've got a new hat or ring to check out. When you do try to interact with the character menus, it's not the easiest thing in the world. It does that awkward thing where if you move your head, it moves too. So rather than being something you can look around and explore, instead you have to play move your eyes but not your head when attempting to read something in your periphery. It's workable, but it's something that I definitely like to see improved. The loot system itself is very nice. You'll find newer weapons with characteristic names like heavy mace and sharp axe and so on, and you'll encounter attributes like extra energy and stamina on pieces of armor, which means you'll sometimes have to choose between increased defense or a minor stat boost and a bit less defense. It's definitely not the laziest thing they could have done, and I really appreciated it. The amount of variance in the environments is okay. I did play the same cave a number of times, and annoyingly out of the 3 go here and kill a boss monster quests I got in this cave, only one of them was actually there waiting for me at the end. It wasn't a big deal because going through the cave was always quite enjoyable. Other environments included a sewer where you absolutely want your map on hand, and a fortressy environment that looked really promising, but I didn't get to fully explore and see the traps you see in the promo stuff, because each time I went in, there was a pitfall trap behind the first door, and basically just a drawn out fight against a legion of a certain enemy. As for the sound, it's generally okay. There's some decent background music that definitely fits the genre well, but it's nothing amazing. The enemy sounds are decent, but a bit limited. For example, every time you kill a rat monster, you'll hear the same slightly awkward death groan. I do hope they add more sounds for the exact same thing happening, and more sounds associated with weapons clashing, hitting flesh and so on, because it will really help to lower the fatigue from the more repetitive side of things. As far as repetition goes though, I have to say this wasn't like playing a mobile phone game. I didn't feel like I was ever grinding, and that's probably due to the loot progression, the decent amount of environments, and the variance in the enemies. There are a number of minor issues, all of which I have full faith will be patched. I have to say, I am a bit of a sucker for Prevent the Fall, because it's by an absolute mile the closest thing I've had to being in virtual reality in a Might and Magic game. I know it's sad, but I just love those games so much. They really embody what a fantasy game is about for me. For 11 quid or 15 bucks, this game is an absolute steal. Anyone who's interested in sword and sorcery type stuff should grab it, and if you find you don't like something, tell the devs, and don't forget you can always refund within 2 hours. Maybe hold off on buying if you're not as enthused as me, but I'd keep an eye on it. I'll try and follow it and see what it develops into. I've got to say, I'm really happy that games like this are starting to emerge in VR. It's got a lot of rough edges, but for the type of game it is, Prevent the Fall does a bloody good job for its price. Thanks for watching. If you like fantasy games, check out my Might and Magic videos. I always want an incentive to do more of them. Leave a like if you liked this video, let me know what you thought if you've played this game, and I'll see you next time.